Welcome to the video on naming covalent compounds. Alright, so we had a whole set of rules that we were going to use for naming ionic compounds. Had to do with math. You had to look up their charges and figure out what the ratio is going to be. We don't do any of that for covalent compounds. The reason being is that for covalent compounds, you can actually have compounds made of the same two elements that have different numbers of atoms of those elements in the molecule, because covalent compounds are not about a ratio, they're about an actual molecule. So because we do this, we can't just call this carbon oxide, and then this would also be carbon oxide. Well, we can't have that because we have to have some distinction between these two. So to create that distinction, and because we cannot do math in order to figure out what these subscripts are going to be, we're going to use prefixes. And so whenever you see prefixes in a name, that should tell you that you have a covalent compound. You never use prefixes for an ionic compound. All right, so when you're doing ionic nomenclature, you always put the cation first, and then the anion. Well, in this case, they're both anions. They're always both anions. So we don't use that. We instead go left to right. So carbon is to the left of oxygen on the periodic table. Boron is to the left of fluorine. Nitrogen is to the left of oxygen. Or if you're in the same row, then you go top to bottom. The only exception is that oxygen always goes last. So if you have oxygen with something that is below it on the periodic table, like if you have sulfur and oxygen, you always put the oxygen last. Or if you have oxygen with some of the halogens that are to the right of it, you still always put the oxygen last. Something like that, whatever. All right, then notice that we have these subscripts, and the subscripts are going to be our prefixes, and so we're going to talk about what subscripts we want prefixes. And the formula still, the name still ends in I to tell us that it's a compound. All right, so the prefixes are from the Greek numbering system. So you're probably more familiar with the Latin numbering system, but maybe you know some of the Greeks. So take a second and try to figure out how many of these you know already. What is 1 in Greek? So 1, you know this word, mono. The opposite of stereo. When the sound is only coming out of one speaker, it's mono. 2 is not bi, it's di. Bi is Latin, di is Greek. 3, tri. 4, not quattro, that is Spanish. 4 is tetra in Greek. Now, these are all the rest of these are very much like the Latin ones. 5, penta, like a pentagon. 6, hexa. 7, hepta, not septa, that is Latin, hepta is Greek. 8, octa. 9, nona. And 10 is deca, like a decathlon. All right. So what you do is you take this prefix and you put it on the name of the whatever compound it is. Now there's a couple of rules. 1, never start with mono. Never on the first element. So there's no prefix on the boron that tells us there's only one boron. You don't put, it's not monoboron trifluoride. The rest of them can go on whichever element. Now, if you have an element that starts with a vowel, like oxygen, and you have one of these that's an I or an O, you're going to drop the I, one of these is an A or an O, you're going to drop the O or drop the A. For example, when we have heptoxide here, it's not heptaoxide, it's just heptoxide, we drop the A. If you had one of these with an I, then you do keep it. So let's try naming these. So we've got 1 carbon and 1 oxygen. Now we're not going to say mono for the carbon, but we are going to say mono for the oxygen. So carbon, and then monoxide. Again, we don't want to put the O for the mono, because then we have the O for the oxygen. If we did that, we'd have carbon monoxide, which just sounds retarded, so we don't do that. Instead, it's carbon monoxide. Okay? This one down here, again, 1 carbon, but now we have 2 oxygens. So now we have carbon dioxide, meaning I have 2 oxygens. All right, let's go back the other way and write some formulas for these. So this is 1 boron, because there's no prefix here, so we don't have to mono. Tri meaning 3, fluoride is F. So that's BF3. Here, dinitrogen, so we have 2 nitrogens. And then hept, 7 oxygens. If we want to name these guys, I just wrote down here, we have sulfur, trioxide, and difluoride. Make sure you don't write fluoride, monoxide. So naming covalents and writing formulas for covalents is wicked easy. You just have to memorize this list of prefixes. There is no math involved. It is one of the easiest things we're going to practice in class next time. Thank you.